Just a quick one. Give me a second to tell you about the proud sponsor of the Hodcast, Site Ready Solutions. In construction, a world where time is tight and quality matters, there's no room for passengers. Site Ready Solutions are changing the game. They're not just getting people into the industry, they're getting them ready to deliver from day one. It all starts in the community, attracting local people who might never have thought of themselves being on a construction site. Then they're given real training, hands-on, hard graft, and to high standards. They're placed where they're needed the most, with the right mindset, skills, and the ability to be productive from day one. Then, importantly, they're retained through ongoing support and mentoring through progression. Because Site Ready Solutions don't just build workers, they build teams, they build trust, and they build futures. From street to site, they're helping everyday people become site-ready professionals, productive, prepared, and proud from the very first day they step on the job. Site Ready Solutions, local people, real skills, day one impact. Visit sitereadysolutions.co.uk and see how they're rebuilding the future of the construction industry, one person at a time. Thanks for listening. Helen, what does social value look like on a building site?
Okay, so it's stuff that we're doing every day. People don't even understand what social value is, really. So just everybody rocking up on site is social value, because it's people in sustained employment or new jobs, which adds value to the community and to their own personal lives and to their family. So that's the first thing, is it's a misconception that it's additional activity as opposed to stuff we do automatically. It's what we do with the environment. Are we building buildings to be greener and kinder to the environment? Are we being kinder to our neighbours that are near us when we're building? And then there's the sort of additional stuff that we do, which is going out and inspiring the next generation, helping people that are less fortunate than ourselves to find a way to get into employment, whether that's in our sector or in another sector. It's about supporting communities with volunteering and making a difference. So, for example, last week, my colleague was working in Cambridge helping a food bank move locations. And they couldn't have done it without our support. We donated the van. So it's those type of things. It's really, just being there is actually social value, because we use local subcontractors, so that keeps the employment local, it keeps the money local, which then means that community economically grows, basically.
It would have been amiss of me not to look into this. And I looked into there are actual numbers of how much the local economy grows by how many local people work on the building site, for example. So say, we're near Brentwood. So say you had a building site in Brentwood. How much, maybe you do know the exact numbers. I couldn't quite work it out, but there's like a scale, isn't there? There's a framework that the government use for it, I think.
Yeah, so there's something called the Government's Green Book, but there's also the majority are based on some proxy values for doing different activities. Yeah, so sustained employment of a person in that local community, and I just want to hasten, local varies from project to project and client to client. So some local is 20 miles, some local can be a whole county. It varies. But basically, whatever the word local means for that project, a person sustaining employment that lives within that local community is worth about £32,000 to the. So it's not physical cash. Yeah, it's money. So proxy values are worked out by a number of things, really. So, if you're paying your taxes, then you're impacting the local economic area. If you are not using health services, because those in employment are less likely to need health services, then you're saving money for the local economy. If your confidence is growing because you're in employment, that has an impact on the people around you. So proxy values aren't a physical cash. They are an element of a number of different things that then make that proxy value. So it's not one element. And that's why if you looked at proxy values, it's then broken down into what supports you personally, what supports you as a project, and what supports the local economy. So it's made up of various ways. But it's roughly a human being staying in permanent employment is worth around 32,000. It can vary down to 30 and up to 33, depending on the postcode. But yeah, that's roughly what it's worth.
And how is there like a length of time that would class as sort of permanent employment or sustained employment?
Sustained employment means that you've gone from one company to the next, or one project to the next, you've stayed with that company. Okay. So for example, I'm in sustained employment. I've been with the business 9.5 years. Yep. So that's sustained employment. Because our sector is predominantly self-employed, they may not work as part of a gang for the same contractor. So technically, they're not in permanent employment, even though they might have concurrent employment, but it could be with different contractors. So the risk factors and their mental health pressures are probably much greater because they're not guaranteed their next lot of work. So for us, I would say sustained employment is somebody that moves from one project to the next with the same company.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense? On a permanent, directly employed contract. That is permanent work. But you could be self-employed and in continuous work, but you're working for a number of different people. So like my other half is self-employed. He's a handyman. He has to know he's only got X amount of weeks worth of work. So he's not really in sustained employment because he has to go out and hunt that next lot of work. And our sector is made up of very much that type of work, in as much that people aren't guaranteed when their next job's going to be, where it's going to be, how long it's going to be. So there's lots of what ifs. So sustained employment is permanent in my head. There isn't, I don't think, a genuine definition, but that's, to me, is what it is. And that 32 grand that I was talking about is for 52 weeks worth of employment.
Okay.
So you'd pro rata it down. If somebody was only on site, I don't know, half the year, that'd only be worth 16 grand then.
I see.
Yeah. So it's quite complicated if you don't work in the sector, but it's called full-time equivalent.
Yeah. It's a really brain fuzzing thing to go through. And I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of it now, because we could be here for literal days unpacking it. So what I'm keen to know is how we work in a sector where, as you said, majority of people are self-employed. And now I know that I work for GSQ Brickwork, and we, generally speaking, we do have a churn. But we've had a lot of our bricklayers and you know the ancillary team around that for a long time. I reckon the churn's probably only about 20%, maybe 25%, which seems like a lot. But when you think that everybody's self-employed, generally, that's not that much of a churn. I was at an event a little while back, and they were talking about like lengths of work and how that impacts in the pipeline of work. How does that impact social value? And how can you plan that?
You can't plan whether somebody's going to stay with a business or not, because personal circumstances can change, team dynamics can change, so life can make things change. So you can help prevent it and improve your retention by looking after your people. And I think, you know, contractors that are going more towards permanent employees as opposed to subcontractor gangs that are self-employed keeping people on board and retaining people is more than money. It is an element of it. You know, we hear in our sector quite regularly, people are moving for 50 pence more an hour down to the project down the road. Yeah, that's not their real reason. Yeah, that's the easy reason to move. The real reason will be about how they're looked after. What are the, you know, canteen facilities? Are they feeling valued in what they do? Or are they just a cog in a wheel to make that building happen? And to me, if the industry can open its eyes and listen to the people, you know, we work in the sector that has the highest rate of suicide. And some of it's all about time pressure. You know, we, like the company I work for, we build schools. They have a start and a finish, and the deadline can't be moved because the next cohort of students need to go into that school then. So that puts lots of pressure on people, and things happen on building sites that you can't plan for. You know, if it rains for weeks and weeks on end, that affects if there's things hidden under the ground. So it's about making your people feel valued, appreciated, care that they've done extra hours, not just expect it. Treat them like the adults that they are that are working for you, and you'll find you'll get that commitment. They'll stay with you, and they will, you know, give you what you need as a business, which is loyalty, commitment, and wanting to come into work and do their best job ever. And I think thinking like that, and that's how that then impacts on social value, in as much that it gives you a workforce that's healthier, that's sustained, builds better quality buildings, which means people aren't getting the headaches. So it supports their health and well-being in a way that people don't really understand and think about.
Well, that sort of takes us nicely onto your day one at work, because obviously you've worked for Morgan Sindall for what, 9 years, was it?
9.5 years. Yeah, heading towards 10. It's the longest I've ever worked for anybody.
Well, that's what I'm interested in. So what I really want to know about is your day one, because I'm assuming, and maybe I'm naughty for assuming this, you haven't only been working for 9.5 years.
But only.
Oh, that would be the dream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, starting my career again.
Yeah. But tell me about your day one, when you first started working. So what did you know? What did you learn? And who was mentoring you, or did you have anyone mentoring you?
Okay, so my day one. So if I go back right to when I left school, I literally left school on the Friday and started my first job on the Monday. I knew I wanted to work with little people, so I nannied. Yeah, I earned rubbish money. I lived in. I looked after, well, by the time I left there 2 years later, I was looking after 3 little people, one of which had major heart surgery, and I still see them today. So not regularly, but, you know, they are people I bump into, which is pretty cool to think I played my little part in their life. From that, I went into bar work, then I went into retail, did retail at management level for 18.5 years, loved all fashion, love clothes. One of my little weaknesses, they're like my sweets. And I really enjoyed looking after clothes and stock, and I enjoyed customers. I was less enamoured with looking after people at that time. It was mostly part-time workforce. Some of my demands of them to run the store, now I'm older and can reflect, probably did seem unreasonable, but I had a business to run, and that was what I was being paid to do. And therefore having empathy with stuff that happened in their lives that meant that they only wanted to work 10 till 2 or 9 till 1 wasn't really my problem as far as I was concerned. So I got out of retail, went into recruitment, was recruiting for other companies in various sectors. And it's really how I ended up in construction, because one of my clients was a contractor and asked me to apply for their internal recruiter vacancy, which was being advertised as full-time, and I was part-time because by this time I'd had my first little one. And I'm like, I only want to work part-time. They said, please apply. So I applied, I secured it, did internal recruitment for about a year, then I fell pregnant, and then I went on maternity leave, and then the world nosedived, and the business I was working for, along with other industries, were laying off people left, right and centre. And I'm on maternity leave thinking, oh my God, my job's going to go. What can I do? I love the company I'm working for. I love the sector I'm working in. what can I do? So I used my keep in touch days, went in, started talking to different people, particularly bid writing team, and found out we weren't answering, and it wasn't called social value back in 2008. It was basically, what are you doing to support communities? And particularly focusing on diversity and the lack of it in our sector. And we were given feedback that our answers were quite rubbish and not really very specific. So I did a pitch to the MD and said, right, I can work on that. These are some of my ideas of things that we can do to make sure we have genuine evidence. And actually, they might impact on who we're recruiting as well. Because I hadn't really realised how poor it was, even though I worked in it. It was just my day job, and I just knew I worked with all blokes, but, you know, hey. And he trusted me, and I went back off maternity leave, doing community investment and creating evidence for our tenders. And I worked for that business for very nearly 8 years doing that. And then I went into a charity working with year 11s that were going to be potentially not an employment, education or training. They were what I call the wobblies. They weren't guaranteed not to go into post-16 options, but they possibly were likely to. And I got a real sense of satisfaction about making a difference in these young people's lives. You know, there's one or two of the young people I worked with, and that programme would have been life-changing for them, you know, not because it was meant to do that, but because we just were their light bulb moment that they needed. And I took a real sense of pride, and I got a lot of pleasure out of that. And it sort of followed what I'd been doing for the previous contractor in a corporate world, about making a difference. And then somebody I know that worked for another contractor knew that Morgan Sindall were looking for a community investment person, as it was called back in the day. I applied because I'm a bit of an opportunist. You know, if there's something, I wasn't unhappy where I was, but I was on a fixed term contract. Let's go and see what this company over here is looking for. Fell in love with what they wanted, knew I could make it my baby, and the rest is history, and here I am, really. So it's been a real wibbly-wobbly journey. And I left education with only, what's today, 1 GCSE of grade 4 in my English literature.
Wow.
So my very first job, my boss wanted me to get my English language. She was very frustrated that I hadn't, so she mentored me to get my English language, and I passed it when I was 17. Then I did no education until I was in my probably late 30s, early 40s, when I then did a level 3 qualification for careers and advice and guidance. And then part of my role as in Morgan Sindall is to promote apprenticeships. And then the government changed how apprenticeships worked, and large companies like us pay levy. We weren't really using our levy, and we had a new HR boss come in, and I was in my 50th year of my life, and I was saying to her, look, you know, it's not very good we don't use our apprenticeship levy, but I'm promoting apprenticeships. I'm asking our subcontractors to have them. We really should be jumping and using this levy. You know, for example, the business could upskill me. And I suggested the degree apprenticeship I could be doing. And I go, but I understand I'm not business critical. 1 week later, the MD come back and said, yes, Helen, you can do that degree. So here I am in my 50s being an apprentice, doing a degree, and I'm not academic at all. And I did struggle. It was hard. You know, I had youngish children, a home to run. We were renovating as well. And I was doing a full-time job suddenly in 4 days, not in 5, because my 5th day was doing my apprenticeship. But, you know, 4 years later, and one very early tutor who without her, I would not have completed my degree. She really did what I needed have done to me to make me commit to it. And I passed with a first degree honours.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and that's probably one of my proudest achievements. And the industry gave me that opportunity and believed in me. And that's one of the things I love about the sector is, you know, if you do care about the people you work with, the difference you can make is huge, you know. And I'm a great role model now for my own 2 children, who are both quite bright boys, but, you know, who wants to do revision and studying? That's far too boring. And I sort of get it.
For sure.
But actually, you know, who could think that you could be an apprentice at 50 and do a degree, you know, when you've left school with not really very good academic results and every school report saying I talk too much?
We often get comments like that on these episodes, on whether it's YouTube or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, saying, oh, apprenticeships are only for young people. Why are you only marketing apprenticeships to young people? Well, everybody who's listening, Helen here, with the best one in the world, you know, 50's young, still, but it's
half my life.
Technically, but it's not a 17-year-old apprenticeship, right? So, and that I didn't actually know that about you, but that is amazing how your company have invested in you. Essentially, you know, and it's not. I guess there's some insider knowledge, like you knew that there was a degree that you could do which went alongside your job. So don't get me wrong, and I'm not playing it down at all, because it is, you know, if you have the knowledge. But again, I see that as part of your job, and what you do is to go, actually, I was able to do this. Anyone else who works around me or works in the local community or doesn't work in the local community can also do this thing as a non-academic chatterbox, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
That's sort of self-proclaimed. Can do it, then it, you know, it's open.
Honestly, and it's quite interesting how we think apprenticeships are only for young people. So our own vacancies, which is only for the east of England, so Suffolk, Norfolk, Essex and Cambridgeshire. Last year we advertised 6 vacancies, 700 applicants, of which 40% were career changers, which we think were over the age of 30. So actually, and I'm in lots of skills groups because I care quite passionately about skills. A lot of sectors are starting to say the same. There's a lot of career changers that are using apprenticeships that are in a position to take an apprenticeship salary. You know, they're not coming in on high rates of salary when they're doing these career changes. They are literally starting and being an early career again in a new sector. But, you know, I work with apprentices in our business that, you know, run homes, have got children. So apprenticeships aren't just for young people. And if you are somebody out on site, I don't know, say you're a bricklayer and you're moving into site management, you know, being a site supervisor, ask for the qualification to go with it. You know, your contractor that you're working for can access funding to help pay towards that apprenticeship. So, you know, why not upskill yourself and give yourself that earning potential? You know, I've been promoted twice since doing my degree, or once during my degree and once I'd finished my degree. I'm earning considerably more than I was when I started my degree. So actually beneficial for my whole family, not just me. So not only do I have this sense of achievement, which I am hugely proud of, even though I still tell people I'm not academic. Technically I am, but, you know, the knock-on impact of that has been huge, and anybody can access that if you've got the commitment. You do need energy and drive to want to do it, because you do have to balance life, work. You know, I'd been in a business for a lot of years doing a full-time job, and suddenly I still needed to do that full-time job, but only in 4 days, you know, and balancing that and getting my qualification were not easy, but I'm so glad I persevered.
We are trying to do that a lot at the moment, with certainly within GSQ and within Site Ready. And you know, we're not a tier 1 contractor by any stretch of the imagination, but we do pay a levy. And what we're trying to promote is CPD amongst the workforce, because if you're a bricklayer, and say you started bricklaying when you were 16, and maybe now you're in your 40s, say, there have been lots of changes to building regulations, to the way that the work is done, to all of these things, which you're just sort of, you pick up. But what we're trying to do is make almost, and it's going to be one of my jobs, one of the many jobs that I have, to help sort of progress that and move that forward in terms of having a way that people can learn about what they're doing constantly. So the idea is we're just growing people over time, because nobody ever should be stagnant. Nobody ever should be standing still, because if you're standing still, you're going backwards, right? Because everyone else is moving forwards. I'd look at the cars. So if you're in a traffic jam and you're letting cars in front of you, you're not going forward. You're basically going backwards because everyone behind you is going forward. And that's what we're really trying to push at the moment. For you, were there... you were talking about your lecturer who got you through, but over the years, have you had any mentors that you thought, oh yeah, they're really good? And if you have, what were their qualities that they had that made you think, you know what, they're really good?
Okay, so throughout my whole career and my whole life, both personally and business-wise, there are people in your life that you think, I want to be like them, yeah? And make sure you befriend them and make sure you ask them, how do they do stuff? And I've got loads of mentors for various different elements of my life. There's some people that are really good politically. So when I'm really frustrated with something, I might ring that person, rant, and then they'll talk to me about how I can get what I need to say in a much calmer and less frustrated way. And then there are people, let's go back to my tutor, Jo, who's an author as well. So if you like nice romantic stories, I recommend her books. She believed in me. And she said I could do it when I felt, I'll never forget that Friday morning. I was sat at my laptop, crying my heart out, thinking, I just can't do this. I was 6 weeks into a 4-year degree, thinking this is impossible. And she told me it wasn't impossible. And I did have it within me. And I think surround yourself with people like that. Whatever it is in life, whether it's personal or business, my whole career, I've had mentors that have been people that have got some really good strengths. They've had weaknesses, and learn from those as well, because they're the way how not to do things. So take your mentors are good both from a positive point of view, but on things you think, I'm never going to do that, because that's one of those things that I know a lot of people don't like. And those mentors will be people that don't want to knock you down. They will be people that want to help you progress in life and share their knowledge. And to me, that's what I'm looking for from my mentors, people that don't want to compete with me. They want to take me along on their journey and help develop me, and see it that it's for the greater good for all of us. That, if somebody helps me, then I'm going to help them. And that's, my mentors have always, it's that self-belief in me that I can do it. I don't have a ceiling, even though sometimes I might put a ceiling above my head and say that's as far as I can go. People have trusted me and allowed me to make mistakes and grow from those mistakes. And I think, taking ownership of that myself has helped those mentors continue to mentor me. And, it always intrigues me when you watch these housey programs where they have somebody like a Sarah Beanie or a George Clark tell them, if you do this and you do that, and they totally ignore it, and then they wonder why they haven't done their best that they could have done. So to me is, find those people. They don't have to be senior people. I've got mentors that are much younger than me, that have got some really good viewpoints and that make me think things differently and can help me develop, I don't know, perhaps some of my behavioural skills or technical skill. I'm rubbish at IT. I'm from the era, we didn't have computers in school when I was at school, Computer paper was green and white with holes down the side of it. It wasn't like it is today. We didn't have mobile phones. I spent my courtship with my young man that I'm still with, in a red telephone box at the top of a hill, putting in my 10p. So IT is completely scary to me. And the young people today are so quick and good at it, that I utilize that skill. Teach me, don't do it for me, teach me. So, you can take ownership of your own development by utilizing those that want to share their knowledge with you. And that's really something I care quite passionately about for myself and for others, really.
You were talking about a ceiling, and you said that you sort of put a ceiling in sometimes. I don't really believe that about you. I think you are the sort of formidable woman who will do whatever she wants to be able to do because you're that driven. You only have to take a little peek at your LinkedIn profile or Google yourself, and you can see that. But there are ceilings for people, certainly within the construction industry. How do you think that comes about, and how do we challenge that?
So there are ceilings completely for anybody, actually, and some of that's about your own confidence in your ability. It's about the people around you also not believing in your ability. The sector is still not 100%, it's not that flexible still. We still don't do job sharing as a default. And it concerns me in the sector where we're encouraging more women to come in. And, by nature, some of those women will go off and have children, potentially. How are they going to come back and job share if we don't have a sector that promotes that? And actually, why should job sharing just be for the girls? Come on, guys, you're part of making those children happen. You might want to also 50% look after your little person and help them grow up and be part of the community that they're living in. So actually, the ceilings some are perceived, and that'll be by the person themselves and by those around them. There'll be societal challenges that we have that also cap that ceiling. So, for example, I regularly debate with my regional director about job sharing, about how can we make us a more inclusive sector? How can we find ways to make work for everybody easier by just thinking differently? And I don't know that we're not there yet. We're definitely moved on heaps in the time I've been in the industry, particularly I would say in the last 5-6 years. The sector is really becoming more inclusive. And I think the mental health conversation has played a huge part in that. Whilst we work in a male-dominated environment, we will have high suicide rates because by default, blokes don't talk. They don't talk about their emotions. So that inclusive workforce and that removing the ceilings, and I'm a great believer in solutions rather than problems. Things do happen in life. Get over it and find the solution. Don't live with that problem and think that that's going to drown you. And I think that can be sometimes your ceiling, is you think you can't overcome whatever that issue is, whether it's learning an IT system or whether it's learning a new way of laying bricks or whatever it is. Find that solution, be a solution-focused person, because that will be what makes your ceiling move every time you go forward. And I suppose that's, I do have battles with myself. Sometimes I do put those ceilings in. People might not outwardly see it, but I do. And I have to think, right, what is that solution? How do I stop that ceiling being what stops me going where I need to go, and take it with me?
I've had a few guests who are, how do I put this kindly? Not that I'm trying to be unkind. Very focused on getting, let's say, minorities, and I don't mean that as in necessarily ethnic or just the construction industry is very male dominated.
It is.
Yeah, let's go with male dominated. I'm trying to also not alienate my audience here too, because arguably my audience is probably fairly male dominated. But what I'm trying to get at is we, in an industry that is so male dominated, how do we encourage other people who are not men, or And also, I think it's predominantly white males in the construction industry.
85% are white males.
So how do we encourage people into the industry, into the jobs that we need, but also get the best people for the job? In case you didn't know, in construction, trust is everything. You trust your team to show up, you trust your tools to perform, and when the pressure's on, you trust your supplier to deliver. That's where Grayson Building Products come in. They've been doing this since 1921, and they've built more than just a business. They've built relationships, expertise, and a reputation that is earned, not claimed. With over 50,000 products in stock and a team of specialists who genuinely understand the craft, Grayson is there. Not just when you order, but when things get complex. It's more than just a price. It's partnership. It's peace of mind. If you want a supplier that moves like part of your team, visit grayson.gb.com and see what real service feels like.
Guys, we still need you. So this is the first barrier, yeah? So this isn't about not wanting white men in our sector. We want people that want to work in our sector, yeah? So if you're a white male listening to this, please stay in our sector. You're working in the best sector. You know, you'll see it when you retire. Stay, hang in there, yeah? And actually, think about the buildings, the roads, the bridges, the railways, whatever it is you're taking part in when you're listening to this. Think how much better that place would be if the workforce was more diverse and had an understanding of how that end product was going to be used. Yeah, you know, it's quite interesting. We're looking at it quite a lot at the moment around, you know, we've had a disability external business come in and audit us about how disabled friendly are our buildings. Yeah. Guess what? Door handles are all put up at a standard height, yeah? And if you're a wheelchair user, you can't reach that door handle quite often, or you can't see over the reception. You know, you won't be able to tell because I'm sat, but I'm relatively short. And the amount of bars I go into and I've got my chin on the counter, you know, it's quite frustrating. But people have designed it to be like that. And actually, if we have a more inclusive workforce, yeah, we will have more diverse ideas. We'll have more empathy about what that building is meant to do for society, the community that it's being built in. And actually, we'll all have a better life. So for me, that inclusion is we want the best people that want to make buildings that make a difference in people's lives, or roads that make a difference in people's lives, or whatever it is. So it's just, that's the purpose. So we need all of you that want to make a difference in life, not necessarily by being a doctor or being a nurse or being a fire officer or a police officer, and making people fit and healthy. The buildings we build, the workplaces we build, all of those things, the roads that we go on. You know, who's had a stressful journey getting to work this morning? Amazingly, I've travelled the A14 and the A12 and it's been blissful today.
Now you've said it.
Whether my journey back will be as nice, but do you know what I mean? It's all those things. If we have a more diverse workforce, then we will think about those things differently. So, white guys, we need you to go and talk to all of your friends, your family. You know, think about your family. It's one of the things I talk about with our subcontractors quite a bit. You know, would you want somebody saying to your daughter, you can't do that because you're a girl? Would you really? Would you want somebody to say to your disabled child, you can't do that because of this? Or do you want somebody to say, well, how do we make it work? How can we help that person be part of society and give back themselves and be meaningful in their lives? That's how we need to start thinking. And if we think like that and think about the people we care about and how we would want them treated, you know, neurodiversity, it's huge. You know, there's just so many different genres that are underrepresented. If you're from the LGBTQ community, we don't shout out about it. There's not even any data on it because the guys that come and the girls that come from that community don't want to own it on our sites because they don't want to be discriminated against. They're still a human being. They still do all the bodily functions that we do. We need to care for them and make them part of our society and allow them to be their best selves wherever they are, because then we'll all get on much happier and be kinder to one another.
I agree. Thank you. Because that's a really frank and honest way of putting it. And I've had conversations with people before, and they're scared of saying what is true. And you don't seem like a person who shies away from the truth very much, or is particularly scared. I get it. You have a position within the company which is senior, so you know there are things that you can't say, there are things that you have to say, But actually, I also feel that your line managers and your directors trust you. You're in a position of trust to say the sensible thing, right? And push the boundaries of sensible too. So thank you for being honest about that, because it's very easy to toe the party line and not really explain it.
We should empower any human being to be their best possible selves, doing the thing that they really want to do, and we need to help each other make that happen. You spoke to me about mentors. That's the role of the mentors. Let's get those mentors really, if you see a sparkle in somebody that you think they can absolutely do what it is I need them to do, invest in them, let them believe that they can achieve it. And we won't be talking, I don't want to be sitting talking that we have 85% white men in our industry. I want to be talking about the amazing buildings and how we're changing the environment that we're living in and how we will impact on climate change through the buildings we build. Yeah, that's where we're really making a difference.
And it also might actually just be that, and again, this is a potentially cancelling statement, but it might actually just be that white aging men are really good at the things that we need, and I can see you already, but I'm not saying
aging men is they're going to be leaving the industry in the next 15 years, yeah,
exactly.
So, and who's going to replace them?
Exactly, yeah? and that's sort of where I'm landing. It's about, at the moment we have this demographic. Right, and arguably those are probably the best people for the job right now.
Oh, they absolutely
but they don't
are.
always have to be the best people for the job. And as you say, we, at Site Ready, we and GSQ, we're trying to make it not a quota thing. Because as soon as you introduce quotas, firstly, those people feel like a quota. Did I get a job because I'm good, or did I get a job because I have the right genitalia for the quota that I'm trying to fit? But also you end up alienating people by the quota, because you're pulling from a smaller population of people who actually want to do the job. Potentially.
Oh yes.
Potentially.
It's only smaller because we've told them that they're not entitled to come into our sector. Sure. It's really interesting. So we're doing a renovation at home, and last year, it's been a bit of a long renovation. So last year I came home from work one day to have our scaffolding had been erected whilst I had been at work. And hanging from said scaffold was a sign at the top that said, "Danger, men at work." Now, I did laugh and say, well, if it was women, there would be no danger because we would be more thoughtful. Yes. But actually, we didn't need the word men at all. We only needed
work in progress.
Yes, or danger, work happening above you, or something like that. Yeah, it didn't need the word men. So I think we need to be careful of the hidden messages that we give to people. If you're a person that's considering coming into our sector and you walk past our site, anybody's construction site, I've had this debate quite regularly with my younger son, who likes to debate with his mother because she knows nothing. But his argument is quite valid. He says, when I walked past a site, Mum, and opposite his school was a big housing estate being built, I only ever saw white boys, Mum. So that's all I think can work on sites. Yeah. And that's the message that site gives us. Yeah. It doesn't look like it could, if I was disabled, I could access it. It doesn't look like if I was from a different group of people, I could access it. So we need to be mindful of that and, really own that, yes, we have some really good people in our sector. Yeah. We also have some people that aren't so good in our sector, irrelevant of their gender or their ethnicity or their faith or their sexuality. Yeah. And that goes for any sector. And we will always have those people, because every sector always has those people. We can all think of people who we worked with or work with that don't do things in quite the same way as we think they should be done. That's humans, yeah? And I think we just need to embrace those people that have got these amazing skills and ask them to share those skills with anybody that wants to learn it, to work in a sector that, leaves a really amazing lasting legacy that impacts on every one of our lives. Whether we're housebound, whether we travel, whatever it is, all of those things are done because of our industry.
I'm glad that my ignorance draws out the excellence in other people, because you put it so eloquently that, and I am sort of playing a bit devil's advocate. The things that I say on here aren't often the things that I actually think. They're just drawing things out of other people. And I love it. I love the fact that we live in a time, and people call you woke for this sort of stuff. I love the fact that we live in a time where anybody can do anything. There's not like you don't have to have prescribed roles. It's difficult for people who have always had prescribed roles, and mum does this and dad does this. And, we live in a, mum and dad are both married, and all of that stuff. And it's hard when it's different, but change is growth, right? It gives growth opportunities.
I often laugh with people about change. Would I still want to be like my nana and putting her washing in a bowl, hand washing it, and then putting it through a mangle? And I watched my nana did that. That's in my lifetime. Yeah, my kids would die of shock if I asked them to hand wash them. Switching the machine on is a big deal for them. Do you know what I mean?
Load the dishwasher.
yeah, hang the washing out and all of those. Do you know what I mean? So actually, some change really is for the benefit of us all. And I think, think about your health and well-being, live in a society that cares for one another, delivers buildings for one another, and includes everybody. And if you're still struggling, please think of your family members, and would you want them not to be able to do anything because of who they are?
Well, let's park that, because if I carry on, I might actually get cancelled. But so let's go sort of circle back to social value, because it does have these conversations are interconnected. Because let's talk about sort of maybe winning work, and certainly with you guys, because you have to go out and win work, and then you get in subcontractors who have to win work with you. So social value sounds like it should always be a priority, but in real life it is. But there are also budgets, there are also time constraints, there are also pressure delivery. So how do you feel that people should balance business with human?
Okay, so tier 1 contractors, we absolutely commit to social value in tenders that require it. We also commit to it in tenders that don't require it, because actually most of the stuff that is social value happens anyway. Yeah. So I would say, particularly if you're senior managers listening to this, or you're a bid writer listening to this, think of the things that you do just automatically. Are you a business that takes on apprenticeships? Are you a business that recruits from people with barriers to work? So they could be ex-offenders, they could be long-term unemployed, they could be pink with blue spots. It doesn't matter. If they're an underrepresented group, you are doing that. Do you regularly do something in your community? Less about fundraising. So I see a lot of contractors and subcontractors talk about their fundraising, right? It is not about the money you raise. What difference is that money going to make? Yeah. Focus on what the money is going to make a difference on, not on the amount of money. And an example, so when I worked for another contractor, I was talking to a youth charity in Ipswich, and every £400 would pay for another counselling session. Yeah, that's what the money was doing. It could pay. So we said, if we raise X amount, can we have it ring fenced to create X amount of extra counselling sessions? So think about, and I see companies promoting their sponsorships. Yeah, that's a nice to do. That's more about staff retention, guys. Yeah, that's not social value in the true sense. Social value is a bit about what impact and difference is that making to that community. And most of the communities that need that are underrepresented communities. You know, most of us that work in our sector are very privileged. You know, we work in a sector that pays well above average salary once you're experienced and committed to whatever it is you're doing, and you do it to a good quality. So we are privileged by nature because of that. But we work in communities where lots of people aren't that privileged. You know, I've been working with some 18 to 24-year-olds in some of the communities we cover. And it breaks my heart that these young people aren't given opportunities because of the adults that were in their lives when they were young people. Yeah, that wasn't their fault. And yes, some of them have got into things that they perhaps shouldn't have got into. But if they had no role models in their life and no mentors to help them believe in themselves, and, you know, it's really interesting. Outwardly, they come out as really overconfident, a bit cocky. The world can't teach them anything. But actually, when you get to know them, most of them have no confidence at all and no self-belief. And actually, that's, if you can think about what you're doing in the communities that makes a difference. You know, did you create, I don't know, an allotment somewhere for a local community? Did you build some brick barbecues for a local community, a youth club or an old people's home that you didn't charge them for, you just did it? A bit of a DIY SOS that makes a difference in somebody's life. Not on the scale of DIY SOS, but, you know, what are you doing in your business that makes a difference to the community? Are you doing stuff around the environment? Like, are you reducing your CO2s of your business? Have you come up with an innovative way that means that you're making less waste when you build your thing? So it's all those sorts of things. And there is not a business out there that's not doing one of those things, yeah? You're either recruiting people locally, you're recruiting people that are less advantaged than yourselves, you are fundraising, don't worry about the money, focus on the difference it's making. Yeah. You're doing good in your community, talk about it, tell whoever it is you're procuring to. Yes. So we're telling our client, we are your client as a subcontractor, tell us your good stuff. When I talk to our SMEs, most of them are doing some really good stuff. They're really mostly rubbish at telling us. Yeah. And actually, you'd help us win more work. Yeah. Just by the nature of your roles, sometimes they're less academically required from the academic point of view to get through the process to become part of your workforce. So like for us, our apprenticeships are all degree level. So you have to have a certain level of academic ability to do that. But some of your roles in the wider industry won't look like that. And that gives you an opportunity to bring people in that might not otherwise get that opportunity. You know, we work in a society where these people that are unlucky in life for whatever reason, and mostly not through their own fault, doesn't help them. There's lots of short-term interventions, nothing that really makes a difference. So I think go back, do your own social value audits. If any of you want help with that, I'm contactable via LinkedIn. I'm more than willing to support with things like that. And actually think, what am I doing that makes a difference to society, to my workforce? You know, health and well-being, you know, are you training your people to be mental health first aiders? Do you run, I don't know, healthy eating sessions once a month? Whatever it is, yeah, all those things are added value to us as a contractor and to our clients, and more importantly, to the community that you're delivering in.
That's amazing. I can't, I have absolutely nothing to add to that, because you've just said it all. Sometimes it feels like it could be a tick box exercise, though. Can you talk to that at all?
Okay, so tick boxes create behaviours. Yeah, so those of us that are in social value have to fill in numbers on portals that have proxy values, yeah. That can sometimes create the wrong behaviours. And I'll use apprenticeships as a really good example, and it's happening less than it was. But a few years ago, there was a real drive to create new apprenticeships, right? So for a contractor like us, tier one, that's not that difficult. Yes, we can sustain a degree level apprenticeship for 4 years. Yeah. You're a bricklaying company. You've got 20 weeks on that said project. Apprenticeships by nature are normally nothing less than 2 years. Yeah. Although the government have now brought in foundation apprenticeships that are 8 months. We will see if they do what they need to do. But the reality is you've got somebody you want to commit to for 2 years, but you can only guarantee them 20 weeks worth of work. Now, we as a contractor, we need to create new apprenticeships. Bricklaying firm, M&E contractor, scaffolding company, ground workers, whoever you are, we need you to create some new apprenticeships. You all say yes because you want to win our work, yeah? They're not sustained apprenticeships, yeah? They are short term. Now, there is a solution. There is companies out there, and I'm a trustee of one of them, that they're the employer and you can hire an apprentice for X amount of things, but that apprentice still needs to complete their 2-year program. Yeah. And that's what KPIs and tick boxing can create the wrong behaviours. Yeah. And we already work in a sector where completions of apprenticeships is relatively low compared to the average apprenticeship. Creating a behaviour that makes that worse is not good. And I think we need to be, I'm a great believer, and I say to our bid writers, if you're writing it in and I don't think we can deliver that, you can't put my name. Yeah, you can only do one or the other. If my name's there, it's got to be things I know we can deliver and that we're doing for the right reasons. Yeah, because it's better to have an impact on one person than create 10 jobs where none of them have anything after 6 months. Yeah, and it's about, that is what KPIs can do. They can create the wrong behaviours. But what they can do is make you think about your behaviours and what things do you want to make a difference in. And I think that's take your business's values. What do you want your business to be? Something that cares for and is important to your business. None of us tier one contractors expect our SMEs to do everything that goes under social value. Do one or two of them and do them really well and give us really good evidence that you do it really well, because that's more impactful than trying to scatter down over lots of things and not doing any of them very well.
Just for I've been in situations before where I have no idea what someone's talking about. So for anyone listening, they don't know what a KPI is. That's a key performance indicator, I believe. An SME is small, medium enterprise.
Yes, it is.
Just so I don't mean to, but I've been in rooms where people are speaking in abbreviations.
Sorry, jargon.
No, it's fine. No,
it's my life.
No, absolutely, and you don't have the time to say the words most of the time. But I'm aware that some people listening to this might be 17 years old and not have an idea what a KPI is.
There'll be people a lot older than that can't know, but
for sure. Well, I only learned about it when I got into construction because I used to run a residential youth centre. We didn't. I mean, we did have what they would class as KPIs, but I didn't know what they were.
Targets is another easy. Targets.
Yeah, and that's what it used to be called, isn't it? Smart targets or whatever they were.
And they still are smart.
Yes.
If you're smart.
If you're smart. We won't go into that now.
No.
The Site Ready Solutions are providing or trying to provide a solution for the skills gap within the industry, and it does talk to the shorter lengths of work. The idea of making someone productive after having 2 weeks of training sounds like it's beyond the realms of possible. I was literally on site yesterday and we had 3 lads who had been on site for 9 days. That was their 10th day in a training thing for 9 days. On their 10th day, they managed to lay 150 bricks to a line to a good standard. Well, they wouldn't. The mentor wouldn't let them lay it to any less of a standard. For us, that's productive. And actually you can have them go onto a building site and work alongside other bricklayers because they're in a direct output business and you can pay them for what they've laid, which is for them is great. That is Site Ready's solution for the skills gap. What would your solution, if you had a magic wand, what would your solution for the skills gap be?
Well, one is we need to start talking and owning it. Yes, because, we need, what is it, nearly 50,000 people per year up until 2029. Can somebody tell me where those 50,000 vacancies are? Yes. Because of how we procure, nobody wants to tell us that they don't have enough people to do the job. Because if you tell us you don't have enough people to do the job, what's the likelihood of you winning the job? Yeah. So you need to be, one, really proactive as a business to own that you need to bring more people in because you're growing. Yeah. Not because you don't have enough people to do what you've got today, but because of your growth forecasts. So it's thinking about it in a different way. You need to work with local training providers, whoever they are. Yes. Talk to them. If you don't want to talk to us as contractors, ask them. It's really interesting. We work in a sector that also has some of the shortest amount of tutors to deliver these courses, short term, long term, whatever they are. Yeah. You find a bricklaying teacher for a college, you find a electrician to teach. There's not enough of us. And that's without assessing them in an apprenticeships. Yeah. There's so many layers. And it's because the sector. So if I could have this magic wand, it will be to get the sectors to work collaboratively together instead of competing with one another. Yes. Colleges, independent training providers, they need X amount of bums on seat to run a course because it costs them. They're a business like you are. Yeah. Work collectively. You all belong to membership groups. Yes. Whatever they're called, Brickwork Federation. I don't know them all. There's lots of them. Carpentry Federation. Yeah. Go to your federation or whoever your membership group is. Get like-minded businesses that deliver the same things that you need. There will be tweaks, there'll be variations, but there will be so many commonalities, and do it collectively. Partner people like Site Ready and others. There's loads, I come across loads, and work and support them in delivering your outcomes. And remember that those that are available for work predominantly will be people with barriers to work. Yeah. Because anybody without a barrier work is probably in work because they've had the people to support them getting into work. If you're a disabled person, and that's physically or non-physically disabled, the likelihood of them being part of the workforce is minute compared to an average Joe Bloggs person getting a job. So go and work with the communities that will support these people getting into employment, but think long term, don't think short term. These people aren't going to be ready in a matter of days. Their work ethics won't be there because they've had stuff happen in their life which is more important than actually keeping down their job. They might be without a home tomorrow, or, they're suddenly not going to be able to pay their bills, whatever it is. So you have to be more understanding. So for me, that magic one is collaboration, doing things differently. Because if you continue to do it as we do it today, and I've been talking skills gaps, not enough people in the industry for nearly 20 years. Yeah. The diversity of the sector has moved 1% in that 20 years. Yeah. And on the tools, it's not changed at all. Yeah. So if you fish in only half the pond, and if you don't work collaboratively, you'll still be sat here in 20 years' time talking about our skills gaps. Yeah. Think about people with transferable skills. There are lots of people in other sectors that want to have a change, and they will have the behavioural skills your industry needs, your part of the sector needs. What they need is to be taught the technical side. And you can teach. If you're good at what you do as a business, which you tell us you are, you will be able to teach those people those technical skills. Behaviours are much harder to teach.
Yeah. we call the behaviours, we call that the zero talent skills. It takes zero talent to turn up on time. It takes zero talent to turn up with a good attitude. Like you don't need any technical skill for that. You just need to be there. Turn up every day.
It's a really good
start.
I'm going to nick that one.
Well, you're welcome.
I'm a bit of a magpie. I steal with pride.
You're welcome. Well, I think I stole it from Garry, who probably stole it from someone else, who stole it from someone else.
No.
Which is amazing. Well, I'm going to give you another magic wand now. If you could, you've sort of already touched on it, and I think to be honest with you, I think your answer is going to be collaborative. But if you had a magic wand, and you could change how our industry works with schools, colleges, and communities, what one thing would you change?
It is. The industry has to work together. So as Morgan Sindall, we're doing loads of stuff. Care are doing loads of stuff. Lots of different companies do loads of stuff, but you all do it individually, and you're not really making a big enough message individually. If we collaborate, so we're doing something in Chelmsford, we've got 23 companies involved. Half of them are being very proactive about being involved. The rest of you, we want you to get more involved, please, if you're listening. Yeah. If we demonstrate to the next generation how amazing our sector is, and yes, I hear you ground workers, you say, oh, it's not exciting, we're digging. Guess what? No building, no road, no bridge, no railway can happen without your foundations and without your groundworks. So own it and be proud of it, yeah? Right up to the roofs or tarmacking, every element of that finishes that product, yeah? You don't go saying to an Apple, somebody who works for iPhone, oh, that bit's not important. It is. So own it, collaborate, and let's work together. If any of you are interested about supporting the work we're doing with young people, it's a 5-year programme about inspiring, and it will follow young people from year 9 all the way through. Then please contact us. We absolutely want as much and as wide of the industry breadth to get involved with it, because there's a job for anybody and everybody in our sector that wants to make a difference. So collaboration, is my answer.
I thought it would be, because you are a very collaborative person, hence you're sat in the chair. Well, that also leads me to, and if someone has made it this far, this is almost like the secret question, because not many people make it this far into the conversation. Maybe that's me. They don't like the sound of my voice, because it's definitely not the guests. But this is our sort of closing tradition. If you could have anybody sit in the same chair as you and have a conversation with me, who would it be, and maybe why?
I'm going to nominate Claire Friel. She'll probably kill me for this, but actually I want to do it because, not just because she's a woman, but actually she's had a really varied career. She's had bumps in the road. She's had ceilings, technically, that would have stopped her achieving what she wanted to achieve. And she cares very passionately about our sector and making a difference. And her values, are very authentic. She wants to make a difference. Yeah, she's on the periphery. She's not directly in the sector, but she supports SMEs being more successful, winning more work. She absolutely cares about bringing more women into the industry. I also care, but I actually care about bringing anybody into the industry that wants to work into the sector. I just want to achieve some parity, which means 50% girls, 50% boys, for those that don't understand the word parity. And she absolutely is very driven. And I think, her story is quite unique. And yeah, she's worked for, SMEs.
Amazing. Well, I will get her details from you. If someone wanted to get hold of you I was going to say for some reason, for any reason, because you're an expert at what you do, to be honest with you, and you can put the ceilings in above yourself. No, not me. I'm not an expert. You are an expert. You wouldn't be sat here otherwise. How would one get hold of you? How can we reach you?
Okay, so I'm just going to clarify. I'm not necessarily an expert. I just care, so I find out. Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to get hold of me, guys. It's just, don't email me; they get buried. LinkedIn, yeah, and your purpose of wanting to contact me, yeah. And if you're a recruitment consultant, I don't need contacting. I work love working for the company I work for, and I get every opportunity to make the difference I need to make with the business I'm with. So just putting that out there.
Well, thank you. I don't think we get many recruitment consultants trying to get their next job offer through to our
I
our
get
guests,
far too many
yeah,
contacting me on LinkedIn. But
Yeah.
yes, no, generally, if you want to know how to do social value, how as a business you can improve your social value, then please contact me, because if you grow, we all grow.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and doing a nearly 200-mile round trip to be here with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.